Social anxiety can feel like a weight pressing down on your chest, making even the simplest interactions feel overwhelming. Whether it's standing in front of a crowd, walking into a room full of strangers, or even just striking up a conversation, that knot in your stomach can feel impossible to untangle. But what if I told you that the tools to conquer this anxiety have been around for thousands of years? Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That single idea, focusing on what's within your control, is the foundation of Stoicism, and it's the key to unlocking a calmer, more confident version of yourself. Today, we're going to explore how Stoic principles like cognitive reframing, resilience, and living in the present moment can help you build the inner fortitude to face social situations with calm and clarity. This isn't just about managing anxiety, it's about transforming it into an opportunity for growth. So, if you've ever felt held back by social fear, stick around, because what you're about to learn could change the way you see yourself and the world around you. What if the key to overcoming social anxiety lies in understanding what you can truly control? This is the heart of the Stoic concept known as the Dichotomy of Control, a principle that can be life-changing if applied thoughtfully. At its core, this idea teaches us to separate what's within our power from what isn't. Social anxiety often thrives on the fear of judgment, what others might think, say, or do. But here's the truth, those external opinions are entirely outside your control. What you can control, however, is how you choose to respond, how you carry yourself, and the effort you put into being present in the moment. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it simply, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing." In other words, your actions, your thoughts, and your mindset are yours to shape. The opinions of others, those are not. This distinction is where the freedom begins. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're at a networking event and you're feeling that familiar knot of anxiety. Your mind might race with thoughts like, what if I say something awkward? Or what if they don't like me? But here's where Stoicism steps in. Instead of fixating on those uncontrollable outcomes, reframe your focus. Ask yourself, what can I control in this moment? You can control how you introduce yourself, how you listen to others, and how you choose to engage. By shifting your attention to your own actions, you reclaim your power and reduce the weight of external pressures. Now think about a social situation in your own life where you often feel anxious. What's one thing you can focus on that's entirely within your control? Maybe it's your posture, your breathing, or simply showing up despite the fear. When you start small, you build confidence, and over time, that confidence becomes your shield against anxiety. The dichotomy of control isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a practical tool ready for you to use in your daily life. So, the next time you feel that wave of social fear, remember, your power lies not in changing others, but in mastering yourself. Stoicism teaches us that our perceptions shape our reality. What if we could change how we see social situations? This is where cognitive reframing comes into play, a powerful Stoic practice that can transform the way you experience anxiety. At its core, reframing is about shifting your perspective. Instead of viewing social interactions as potential threats, you can see them as opportunities for growth, connection, or even learning. The Stoics believed that it's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those events. In other words, it's not the crowded room or the awkward silence that causes your anxiety, it's the meaning you attach to them. And the good news, you have the power to change that meaning. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most influential thinkers, put it this way, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about that for a moment. How much of your social anxiety is rooted in what might happen rather than what actually happens? When you reframe your thoughts, you take control of that narrative. Instead of imagining all the ways a conversation could go wrong, you can focus on the possibilities it holds. Maybe that networking event isn't a minefield of judgment. It's a chance to meet someone interesting or learn something new. Maybe that presentation isn't a test of your worth. It's an opportunity to share your ideas and grow your confidence. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you're preparing for a job interview. The thought of sitting across from a panel of strangers might trigger a cascade of negative thoughts. What if I mess up? Or what if they think I'm not good enough? But what if, instead of seeing it as a high-stakes interrogation, you reframed it as a conversation, a chance to share your skills, ask questions, and learn more about the role? By shifting your focus from fear to curiosity, you not only reduce your anxiety but also approach the situation with a mindset that's open and engaged. This is the essence of cognitive reframing, turning "what if I fail" into "what can I gain?" Now, take a moment to reflect on an upcoming social event in your life. It could be anything: a party, a meeting, or even a casual chat with a neighbor. How are you currently perceiving it? Are you focusing on what could go wrong, or are you open to what could go right? Try reframing it in your mind. Instead of seeing it as a challenge, view it as an opportunity. Maybe it's a chance to practice kindness, to listen deeply, or simply to enjoy the moment. The act of reframing won't erase your anxiety overnight, but it will give you a new lens to view your fears, one that empowers you rather than holds you back. This is the beauty of Stoic wisdom. It doesn't just tell you to stop worrying. It gives you practical tools to reshape your thoughts and, in doing so, reshape your reality. By reframing your perceptions, you're not ignoring your anxiety, you're taking charge of it. And when you do that, you'll find that the world feels a little less daunting, and your inner strength grows a little brighter with each step. Have you ever noticed how being fully present can dissolve social fears? It's almost like stepping out of the storm of your thoughts and into a calm, steady space where anxiety loses its grip. This is the power of presence, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy that can transform how you experience social interactions. The Stoics understood that much of our anxiety stems from overthinking, replaying past mistakes, or imagining future failures. But when you focus on the here and now, you strip away those layers of worry and find clarity in the present moment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." It's a simple yet profound reminder that the only moment you truly have is the one you're in right now. When you're fully engaged in the present, there's no room for the what-ifs that fuel social anxiety. Instead of worrying about how others might perceive you or what could go wrong, you're able to connect authentically with the people around you. This shift in focus doesn't just reduce anxiety, it enhances your ability to listen, respond, and engage meaningfully. Let's bring this to life with an example. Picture yourself at a dinner party, surrounded by people you don't know well. Your mind might start racing. What if I say something awkward? What if they think I'm boring? But here's where the practice of presence comes in. Instead of getting lost in those thoughts, you ground yourself in the moment. You notice the texture of the glass in your hand, the sound of laughter around the table, the warmth of the room. You focus on the conversation, not as a performance, but as an opportunity to connect. By staying present, you're no longer trapped in the mental spiral of self-doubt. You're simply here, engaged and alive. This isn't just a theoretical idea, it's a skill you can cultivate. Start small. In your next conversation, try to notice the details, the tone of the other person's voice, their facial expressions, the flow of the discussion. When your mind starts to wander into anxious territory, gently guide it back to the present. It's not about perfection, it's about practice. Each time you bring yourself back to the moment, you're strengthening your ability to stay grounded, even in challenging social situations. So here's a challenge for you. In your next social interaction, commit to being fully present. Whether it's a quick chat with a coworker or a family gathering, see if you can immerse yourself in the experience without judgment or worry. Notice how it feels to let go of the mental noise and simply be there. The more you practice this, the more natural it will become, and the less power your anxiety will hold over you. Presence isn't just a Stoic principle, it's a pathway to freedom, one moment at a time. What if the path to overcoming social anxiety lies in embracing discomfort? It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, when we feel anxious, our instinct is to avoid the situations that trigger those feelings. But here's the paradox: avoiding discomfort only strengthens its hold over us. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that true growth comes not from shying away from challenges, but from leaning into them. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who endured enslavement and hardship, once said, "Difficulties are things that show what men are." In other words, it's through facing challenges that we discover our strength and resilience. And when it comes to social anxiety, this principle couldn't be more relevant. Think about it. Every time you avoid a social situation because it feels uncomfortable, you're reinforcing the idea that it's something to fear. The more you avoid, the more your anxiety grows, creating a cycle that's hard to break. But Stoicism offers a different approach. Instead of running from discomfort, it invites you to confront it, not recklessly, but intentionally and gradually. By willingly stepping into situations that feel uncomfortable, you begin to rewire your brain. You prove to yourself that you can handle it, that the fear is often worse than the reality. Over time, this builds not just resilience, but also a sense of mastery over your anxiety. Let's take a practical example. Imagine someone who's terrified of public speaking. At first, the thought of standing in front of a group might feel unbearable, but instead of avoiding it altogether, they take small, deliberate steps. They might start by speaking up in a small meeting, then progress to presenting to a few colleagues, and eventually work their way up to larger audiences. Each step feels uncomfortable at first, but with repetition, the discomfort lessens. What once seemed impossible becomes manageable, even empowering. This is the essence of Stoic practice, not avoiding fear, but facing it head-on to diminish its power. Now, consider your own life. Is there a social situation you've been avoiding because it feels too uncomfortable? Maybe it's attending a social gathering, making a phone call, or even just saying hello to a stranger. Here's a challenge for you. This week, take one small step outside your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be a huge leap, just something that pushes you slightly beyond what feels safe. Maybe it's initiating a conversation with someone new or attending an event you'd normally skip. The key is to do it intentionally, with the mindset that discomfort is not your enemy but your teacher. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety overnight. It's to build your capacity to handle it one small step at a time. Each time you embrace discomfort, you're proving to yourself that you're stronger than your fears. And with each victory, no matter how small, you're chipping away at the walls that social anxiety has built around you. The Stoics didn't promise an easy life, they promised a meaningful one. And part of that meaning comes from facing challenges with courage, knowing that on the other side of discomfort lies growth, confidence, and freedom. So, what's one small way you can step out of your comfort zone this week? The answer might just be the first step toward a more confident, resilient you. Stoicism teaches that living virtuously is the key to a fulfilling life, but how does this apply to social anxiety? At its core, Stoic virtue isn't just about being a good person. It's about cultivating qualities like courage, wisdom, and self-control that help us navigate life's challenges with integrity and strength. When it comes to social interactions, these virtues become powerful tools for overcoming fear and building meaningful connections. Courage, for instance, isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. Wisdom reminds us to focus on what truly matters, rather than getting caught up in the noise of external judgments. Together, these virtues can transform how you approach social situations, turning anxiety into an opportunity for growth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one." This simple yet profound statement challenges us to stop overthinking and start embodying the virtues we admire. When you apply this to social anxiety, it means stepping into situations with courage even when your heart is racing. It means choosing to act wisely, focusing on what you can control: your intentions, your words, your actions, rather than worrying about how others might perceive you. Virtue isn't about perfection, it's about effort. It's about showing up as your best self, even when it's hard. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone who struggles with initiating conversations because they fear rejection. One day, they decide to act with courage and strike up a conversation with a coworker they've never spoken to before. It's uncomfortable at first, but they focus on being present and genuinely interested in the other person. They don't worry about saying the perfect thing or being judged. They simply act with kindness and curiosity. What happens? The conversation flows naturally, and they leave feeling more connected and confident. This is the power of virtue in action. It's not about eliminating fear, it's about choosing to act in alignment with your values even when fear is present. Now think about your own life. When was the last time you faced a social situation that made you anxious? How did you respond? Did you let fear dictate your actions, or did you find a way to act with courage and wisdom? The beauty of Stoic virtue is that it's always within your reach. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the right circumstances. You can start small, by saying hello to a stranger, by sharing an idea in a meeting, or by simply showing up to an event you'd normally avoid. Each act of courage, no matter how small, strengthens your ability to face future challenges with confidence. Here's a question to reflect on. How can you embody Stoic virtues in your next social interaction? Maybe it's by summoning the courage to speak up, even when your voice shakes. Maybe it's by practicing wisdom, focusing on what you can control rather than what you can't. Or maybe it's by acting with kindness, both toward yourself and others. Remember, virtue isn't a destination, it's a practice, and every time you choose to act with courage and wisdom, you're not just overcoming social anxiety, you're building a life of meaning and connection. So, what's one way you can practice virtue today? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a more confident you. What if imagining the worst could actually help you overcome social anxiety? It might sound counterintuitive, but this is exactly what the Stoic practice of negative visualization is all about. Instead of running from your fears, this technique invites you to face them head-on by visualizing the worst-case scenario. The idea isn't to dwell on negativity, but to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally so that when challenges arise, they don't catch you off guard. By confronting your fears in your mind, you take away their power to overwhelm you in real life. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest minds, put it this way: "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. In other words, when you've already imagined and accepted the possibility of failure or embarrassment, you're better equipped to handle it if it happens. The fear of the unknown is often far worse than the reality, and negative visualization helps you bridge that gap. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine you're preparing to give a public speech, and the thought of standing in front of an audience fills you with dread. Instead of trying to push those feelings away, take a moment to visualize the worst-case scenario. What if you stumble over your words? What if the audience seems disinterested? Picture it vividly and then ask yourself, what would I do if that happened? Maybe you'd pause, take a deep breath, and continue. Maybe you'd laugh it off and use humor to reconnect with the audience. By imagining these scenarios, you're not just preparing for the worst, you're building a mental toolkit to handle it. And when the time comes, you'll feel more grounded and less afraid. Now think about a situation in your own life that triggers social anxiety. It could be a job interview, a first date, or even a casual conversation with someone new. What's the worst that could happen? Take a moment to visualize it and then consider how you'd respond. Would it really be as catastrophic as your mind makes it out to be? Often you'll find that the imagined worst-case scenario is far more dramatic than the reality, and simply acknowledging it can take away some of its sting. Here's a challenge for you. Before your next anxiety-inducing event, try negative visualization. Spend a few minutes imagining the worst possible outcome and then think through how you'd handle it. Notice how it feels to confront those fears in your mind. You might find that the act of preparation not only reduces your anxiety, but also gives you a sense of control and confidence. After all, when you've already faced the worst in your imagination, the reality often feels far less daunting. Negative visualization isn't about pessimism, it's about resilience. It's a way of preparing yourself for life's uncertainties so that no matter what happens, you can face it with calm and clarity. So, the next time social anxiety creeps in, don't shy away from the fear. Lean into it, visualize it, and remind yourself that you're stronger than you think. Because sometimes the best way to overcome fear is to look it straight in the eye and realize it's not as scary as it seems. Stoicism teaches us to know ourselves. How can this help with social anxiety? At its core, self-awareness is about understanding your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, especially in situations that make you uncomfortable. When it comes to social anxiety, this self-knowledge is transformative. By recognizing what triggers your anxiety and how you typically react, you gain the power to pause, reflect, and choose a different response. It's like holding up a mirror to your mind and saying, "This is where I struggle and this is where I can grow." Epictetus, one of the most practical Stoic philosophers, emphasized this idea when he said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, self-awareness is the first step toward change. If you don't know what's causing your anxiety, how can you begin to address it? By examining your thoughts and reactions, you uncover patterns that might be holding you back. Maybe you notice that you feel most anxious in large groups because you fear being judged. Or perhaps you realize that certain types of conversations, like small talk, make you feel insecure. Whatever the trigger, identifying it is the first step toward reclaiming your power. Let's take a practical example. Imagine someone who dreads speaking up in meetings because they're afraid of saying something foolish. Through self-awareness, they notice that this fear stems from a childhood experience where they were mocked for a mistake in front of their classmates. By recognizing this pattern, they can begin to separate the past from the present. They remind themselves that the people in the meeting aren't there to judge them, they're there to collaborate. With this new perspective, they can approach the situation with more confidence and less fear. This is the power of self-awareness. It allows you to untangle the roots of your anxiety and replant them in healthier soil. Now think about your own life. What situations tend to trigger your social anxiety? Is it meeting new people, speaking in public, or something else entirely? Take a moment to reflect on what's really at the heart of that fear. Is it a fear of rejection, of being misunderstood, or of not measuring up? Once you've identified your triggers, you can start to address them. One powerful way to do this is through journaling. Write down the situations that make you anxious, how they make you feel, and what thoughts run through your mind. Over time, you'll start to see patterns emerge, and with those patterns, opportunities for growth. Here's a challenge for you. This week, set aside 10 minutes each day to journal about your social anxiety. Ask yourself, what specific situations make me anxious? What thoughts or beliefs are driving that fear? The act of writing it down not only clarifies your thoughts, but also creates a sense of distance between you and your anxiety. You're no longer caught up in the whirlwind of emotions. You're observing them, understanding them, and taking the first step toward managing them. Self-awareness isn't about judging yourself or dwelling on your flaws. It's about understanding yourself with compassion and curiosity so you can grow. And as you grow, you'll find that social anxiety becomes less of a prison and more of a challenge, one you're equipped to face with clarity and courage. So take that first step, look inward, reflect, and remember, the more you know yourself, the more power you have to shape your life. What if letting go of outcomes could free you from social anxiety? It's a radical idea, especially when so much of our fear in social situations comes from worrying about how we'll be perceived. Will they like me? Did I say the right thing? What if I embarrass myself? These questions swirl in our minds, feeding the very anxiety we want to escape. But Stoicism offers a different path, the art of detachment. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or uncaring. It's about releasing your grip on things you can't control, like the opinions of others, and focusing instead on what you can control, your own actions, intentions, and mindset. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound insight reminds us that external outcomes, whether someone approves of us, laughs at our joke, or even ignores us, are beyond our control. What's within our power is how we choose to respond. When you detach from the need for approval or validation, you take back your freedom. You're no longer held hostage by the fear of judgment because you've stopped giving it so much weight. Instead, you can focus on being authentic, present, and true to yourself. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're at a party and you've just introduced yourself to someone new. As you talk, you notice they seem distracted, glancing over your shoulder or giving short, uninterested responses. If you're attached to their approval, this might trigger a wave of anxiety. Did I say something wrong? Do they not like me? But if you're practicing detachment, you can shift your perspective. You might think, I can't control how they respond, but I can control how I show up. I'll stay kind, curious, and present regardless of their reaction. By letting go of the need for a specific outcome, you free yourself from the spiral of self-doubt and find peace in the moment. Now think about your own life. Can you recall a time when you felt anxious because you were overly focused on someone else's opinion? Maybe it was during a presentation, a date, or even a casual conversation. What would it feel like to approach that situation with a sense of detachment, not apathy, but a calm acceptance that you can't control how others see you? The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't diminish your connection to others, it deepens it. When you're not preoccupied with seeking approval, you're free to engage more authentically, listen more deeply, and connect more meaningfully. Here's a challenge for you. In your next social interaction, practice detachment. Let go of the need for a specific outcome and focus instead on being fully present. Notice how it feels to interact without the weight of judgment or expectation. You might find that the less you cling to external approval, the more you discover your own inner calm and confidence. Detachment isn't about avoiding life, it's about living it more freely with less fear and more joy. So, what's one situation where you can try letting go this week? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a calmer, more fearless you. Stoicism teaches us that adversity is a teacher. How can this help with social anxiety? Think about it. Every time you face a difficult social situation, you're not just enduring it, you're building resilience. The Stoics believed that challenges aren't obstacles to avoid, they're opportunities to grow stronger. Seneca, one of the most insightful Stoic philosophers, put it this way: difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. In other words, just as lifting weights makes your muscles stronger, facing social challenges can toughen your mental and emotional resilience. And when it comes to social anxiety, this perspective can be life-changing. Let's break this down. Imagine someone who struggles with public speaking. The first time they stand in front of an audience, their heart races, their palms sweat, and their mind goes blank. It feels like a disaster, but instead of giving up, they decide to try again. The second time, they're a little less nervous. The third time, they start to find their rhythm. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes manageable, even empowering. This is resilience in action. Each challenge, each moment of discomfort builds their capacity to handle future situations with greater ease and confidence. Social anxiety doesn't disappear overnight, but with each small victory, its grip weakens. Now consider your own life. Can you think of a time when you faced a social challenge and came out stronger on the other side? Maybe it was a difficult conversation, a nerve-wracking presentation, or even just showing up to an event you'd normally avoid. What did you learn from that experience? Chances are you discovered something about yourself, maybe that you're braver than you thought, or that even when things don't go perfectly, you can handle it. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, not avoiding adversity, but embracing it as a chance to grow. Here's a practical way to apply this. The next time you're in a social situation that makes you anxious, try reframing it as an opportunity. Instead of thinking, "This is so uncomfortable, I just want it to be over," ask yourself, "What can I learn from this? How can this experience make me stronger?" Maybe it's a chance to practice staying present, to improve your listening skills, or simply to prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort. By shifting your mindset, you turn adversity into a tool for growth. So here's a challenge for you. Reflect on a past social challenge that felt overwhelming at the time. What did it teach you about yourself, and how can you carry that lesson forward into future situations? Remember, resilience isn't about never feeling fear. It's about moving forward despite it. Each time you face a challenge, you're not just surviving it, you're building the inner strength to thrive. And that's a gift that only adversity can give. What if gratitude could help you overcome social anxiety? It might seem like an unlikely solution, but the Stoics believed that gratitude has the power to transform how we see the world and ourselves. When you're caught in the grip of social fear, it's easy to focus on what might go wrong. The awkward silence, the judgmental glance, the misstep that could leave you feeling exposed. But what if, instead of dwelling on those fears, you shifted your attention to what you already have? Gratitude, as the Stoics taught, is a way of redirecting your focus from what's lacking to what's abundant in your life. And in doing so, it can help you approach social situations with a sense of calm and appreciation. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most revered figures, wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This simple practice, starting your day with gratitude, can set the tone for how you engage with others. When you're grounded in appreciation, you're less likely to be consumed by fear. Instead of worrying about how others might perceive you, you can focus on the opportunity to connect, share, and learn. Gratitude doesn't erase anxiety, but it does give you a healthier perspective. It reminds you that even in moments of discomfort, there's something to be thankful for. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're at a networking event and you're feeling the familiar knot of anxiety in your stomach. Your mind might race with thoughts like, what if I say something awkward? Or what if no one talks to me? But instead of letting those fears take over, you pause and take a moment to practice gratitude. You might think, I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet new people. I'm grateful for the chance to learn something new. I'm grateful for the courage it took to show up today. By shifting your focus to what you appreciate, you create a mental space where anxiety has less room to thrive. You're no longer trapped in the what-ifs, you're anchored in the present with a sense of purpose and appreciation. Now think about your own life. What are 3 things you're grateful for right now? It could be anything. Your health, your relationships, the opportunity to grow, or even the small joys of daily life. Before your next social event, try listing these things in your mind or writing them down. Notice how it feels to focus on what you appreciate rather than what you fear. You might find that gratitude doesn't just reduce your anxiety, it also opens your heart to the people around you, making it easier to connect authentically. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you're feeling anxious about a social situation, take a moment to practice gratitude. Think of 3 things you're thankful for and let that sense of appreciation guide your mindset. You don't have to wait for a big event to try this. It can be as simple as a conversation with a neighbor or a quick chat with a coworker. The more you practice gratitude, the more natural it will become, and the less power your anxiety will hold over you. Gratitude isn't just a feel-good practice, it's a powerful tool for shifting your perspective and reclaiming your peace of mind. When you focus on what you're thankful for, you're not ignoring your fears, you're choosing to see the bigger picture. And in that picture, there's room for connection, growth, and joy. So, what are you grateful for today? Take a moment to reflect and let that gratitude light your way forward. Stoicism teaches us that we are part of a larger whole. How can this help with social anxiety? At its core, Stoic philosophy reminds us that we're not isolated individuals navigating life alone. We're interconnected beings sharing the same human experience. This sense of belonging, of being part of something greater, can be a powerful antidote to the isolation and fear that often accompany social anxiety. When we feel connected to others, the weight of our fears begins to lighten. We realize that we're not the only ones who struggle, and that vulnerability is a universal part of being human. This shift in perspective can transform how we approach social interactions, turning them from sources of dread into opportunities for connection. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most influential thinkers, once said, "We are all fellow travelers in this world, and our true home is in the community of humanity." This simple yet profound idea invites us to see ourselves as part of a shared journey. When we recognize that everyone around us is navigating their own challenges, fears, and insecurities, it becomes easier to let go of the idea that we're being judged or singled out. Instead of seeing others as potential critics, we can see them as allies, people who, like us, are doing their best to navigate life's complexities. This shift in mindset doesn't just reduce anxiety, it fosters empathy, compassion, and a deeper sense of belonging. Consider this example. Imagine someone who has always felt anxious in group settings, convinced that they don't belong or that others will reject them. One day, they join a local book club drawn by a shared love of literature. At first, their anxiety is overwhelming. They worry about saying the wrong thing or being judged for their opinions. But as they continue to attend, something shifts. They begin to see the other members not as intimidating strangers, but as fellow book lovers who share their passion. Over time, the group becomes a source of support and connection, a place where they feel seen and accepted. This is the power of community in action. It reminds us that we don't have to face our fears alone, that there are others who understand, who care, and who are walking the same path. Now think about your own life. What communities or groups do you feel connected to? It could be a group of friends, a workplace, a hobby club, or even an online community. How does being part of that group make you feel? If you're struggling with social anxiety, consider how you might strengthen those connections. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, joining a new group that aligns with your interests, or simply being more open and present in the communities you're already part of. Each step you take to deepen those connections is a step toward reducing the grip of anxiety. Here's a question to reflect on. How can you cultivate a stronger sense of belonging in your life? Is there a group or community where you feel safe and supported? If not, what's one small step you can take to create or find that space? Remember, community isn't just about being surrounded by people, it's about feeling seen, heard, and valued. And when you find that sense of connection, you'll discover that the world feels a little less intimidating, and your inner strength grows a little brighter with each interaction. Stoicism doesn't just teach us to rely on ourselves, it reminds us that we're stronger together. By embracing the role of community in our lives, we can transform social anxiety from a source of fear into an opportunity for connection and growth. So take a moment to reflect on your own relationships and communities. How can you nurture them, and how can they nurture you? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a more confident, connected version of yourself. What if preparation could be your secret weapon against social anxiety? It might sound simple, but the Stoics understood that readiness is a cornerstone of confidence. When you walk into a social situation feeling unprepared, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Your mind races, your body tenses, and the fear of the unknown takes over. But when you take the time to prepare, you shift the balance. You're no longer at the mercy of uncertainty. You've equipped yourself with tools to navigate the moment with clarity and calm. The Stoics believed that preparation isn't just about anticipating challenges. It's about building the mental and emotional resilience to face them head-on. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most practical thinkers, put it this way: luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. In other words, the more you prepare, the less you leave to chance. This doesn't mean obsessing over every detail or trying to control the uncontrollable. It's about creating a foundation of readiness that allows you to approach social situations with confidence, even when things don't go as planned. Think of it like training for a race. The more you practice, the more prepared you feel, and the less intimidating the starting line becomes. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone who's nervous about attending a wedding where they don't know many people. Instead of dreading the event, they decide to prepare. They might start by researching the guest list to identify a few people they'd like to meet. They could practice a few conversation starters or topics they feel comfortable discussing. They might even visualize the event, imagining themselves walking in confidently, introducing themselves and enjoying the experience. By the time the wedding rolls around, they're not walking into the unknown, they're stepping into a situation they've already mentally rehearsed. This preparation doesn't eliminate all anxiety, but it gives them a sense of control and confidence that makes the experience far less daunting. Now think about your own life. Is there an upcoming social event or interaction that's causing you anxiety? What would it look like to prepare for it in a way that feels meaningful to you? Maybe it's practicing what you'll say, visualizing the scenario, or even setting an intention for how you want to show up. The key is to focus on what's within your control, your mindset, your approach, and your willingness to engage. Preparation isn't about perfection. It's about giving yourself the tools to handle whatever comes your way. Here's a challenge for you. Before your next social interaction, take a few moments to prepare. Think about what might help you feel more confident, whether it's rehearsing a few lines, setting a positive intention, or even just taking a few deep breaths to ground yourself. Notice how it feels to walk into the situation with a sense of readiness. you might find that the act of preparation doesn't just reduce your anxiety, it empowers you to approach the moment with curiosity and calm. Preparation is more than just a practical tool, it's a way of reclaiming your power. When you prepare, you're not just anticipating challenges, you're building the resilience to face them with grace and confidence. So the next time social anxiety tries to hold you back, remember, you have the power to prepare, and in that preparation, you'll find the strength to step forward with courage and calm. Stoicism teaches us to be kind to ourselves. How can this help with social anxiety? At first glance, the idea of self-compassion might seem at odds with the Stoic emphasis on discipline and self-control. But here's the truth, being kind to yourself isn't about letting yourself off the hook or avoiding responsibility. It's about recognizing your humanity, your imperfections, and your capacity for growth. When it comes to social anxiety, self-compassion is a game changer. It counteracts the harsh self-judgment that often fuels our fears, the inner critic that whispers, "You're not good enough," or "You'll embarrass yourself." By treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend, you create a safer mental space to face challenges without being crushed by self-doubt. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher king, once wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But even in his call for self-discipline, there's an undercurrent of self-compassion. He understood that we're all works in progress and that growth requires both effort and patience. Think about that for a moment. Strictness without kindness can lead to burnout, but kindness without accountability can lead to complacency. The Stoic approach to self-compassion strikes a balance. It's about holding yourself to high standards while also acknowledging that you're human, that you'll make mistakes, and that those mistakes don't define you. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone who's just given a presentation at work. Halfway through, they stumble over their words, lose their train of thought, and feel their face flush with embarrassment. Afterward, their inner critic goes into overdrive. "You messed up, everyone noticed, you're terrible at this." But instead of spiraling into self-criticism, they pause and practice self-compassion. They remind themselves, "I'm still learning, it's okay to make mistakes. What matters is that I showed up and tried." By reframing their inner dialogue, they shift from self-judgment to self-acceptance. This doesn't mean they don't reflect on what they could improve. It simply means they approach their growth with kindness rather than harshness. Now think about your own life. Can you recall a time when you were overly critical of yourself after a social interaction? Maybe it was a conversation that didn't go as planned, or a moment when you felt out of place. How did that self-criticism affect you, and what would it feel like to approach that moment with self-compassion instead? The beauty of this practice is that it doesn't erase the challenges, it changes how you relate to them. When you're kind to yourself, you're less likely to be paralyzed by fear and more likely to take risks, learn, and grow. Here's a question to reflect on. How can you practice self-compassion in your next social situation? Maybe it's by reminding yourself that it's okay to feel nervous, or by celebrating the courage it took to show up, even if things didn't go perfectly. Self-compassion isn't about lowering your standards, it's about meeting yourself where you are with kindness and understanding. And when you do that, you'll find that social anxiety loses some of its power, making room for confidence, connection, and growth. So, what's one way you can be kinder to yourself today? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a calmer, more resilient you. What if humor could be a Stoic tool for overcoming social anxiety? It might seem surprising after all. Stoicism is often associated with seriousness and self-discipline. But here's the twist. The Stoics understood that laughter and lightness have a vital role to play in navigating life's challenges. Humor, when used thoughtfully, can break down barriers, diffuse tension, and remind us not to take ourselves too seriously. In social situations where anxiety often stems from fear of judgment or awkwardness, humor becomes a powerful way to connect, ease discomfort, and shift the energy of a moment. It's not about cracking jokes to mask your fear, it's about finding lightness in the human experience and using it to build bridges. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, wrote, "It is more fitting for a man to laugh at life than to lament over it." This isn't a call to avoid life's difficulties, but a reminder that laughter can be a form of resilience. When we laugh, even at ourselves, we create a mental distance from our fears. We see them not as insurmountable obstacles, but as part of the shared, sometimes absurd, experience of being human. In social interactions, this shift in perspective can be transformative. A well-timed humorous remark or a light-hearted observation can turn an awkward moment into a shared laugh, reminding everyone involved that perfection isn't the goal, connection is. Consider this example. Imagine someone at a networking event who accidentally spills their drink while introducing themselves. Instead of shrinking into embarrassment, they smile and say, "Well, I guess I'm making a splash, literally." The room laughs, the tension dissolves, and suddenly, everyone feels a little more at ease. By embracing the mishap with humor, they've not only diffused their own anxiety, but also created a moment of connection. This is the power of humor in action. It doesn't erase the awkwardness, but it reframes it, making it easier to move forward with confidence. Now think about your own life. Can you recall a time when humor helped you navigate a challenging social situation? Maybe it was a self-deprecating joke that broke the ice, or a shared laugh that turned a tense moment into a lighter one. Humor doesn't have to be elaborate or rehearsed. It's often most effective when it's spontaneous and authentic. The key is to approach it with the Stoic mindset, not as a way to avoid discomfort, but as a tool to transform it. Here's a challenge for you. In your next social interaction, look for an opportunity to introduce a moment of humor. It could be as simple as laughing at a small mistake or finding a light-hearted way to acknowledge the awkwardness of a situation. Notice how it feels to shift the energy in the room and within yourself. You might find that humor doesn't just ease your anxiety, it also deepens your connection to others, reminding you that we're all in this together. Humor, in the Stoic sense, isn't about avoiding reality. It's about engaging with it in a way that's both grounded and joyful. So, the next time social anxiety tries to weigh you down, remember, a little laughter can go a long way. After all, life is too short not to find the humor in it. What's one way you can bring a touch of lightness to your next interaction? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a more relaxed, confident version of yourself. Stoicism teaches us the power of reflection. How can journaling help with social anxiety? At its core, journaling is more than just writing down your thoughts. It's a way to process your experiences, gain clarity, and uncover patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. For those struggling with social anxiety, this practice can be transformative. By putting your thoughts and feelings on paper, you create a space to examine them objectively, free from the whirlwind of emotions that often cloud your mind. It's like having a conversation with yourself, one that helps you understand your fears, celebrate your progress, and chart a path forward. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most revered figures, wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." This idea of looking inward is at the heart of Stoic journaling. It's not about dwelling on your mistakes or beating yourself up for feeling anxious. It's about digging deep to uncover the truth of your experiences and using that insight to grow. When you write about a social interaction, for example, you're not just recounting what happened. You're exploring how it made you feel, what thoughts arose, and how you responded. Over time, this process helps you see patterns, recognize triggers, and develop strategies to handle them more effectively. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone who feels anxious every time they have to speak up in meetings. They decide to start a Stoic journal, and after each meeting, they write about their experience. They note how they felt before, during, and after the meeting, what thoughts ran through their mind and how they responded. Over time, they notice a pattern. Their anxiety spikes when they're worried about being judged, but it lessens when they focus on listening and contributing thoughtfully. With this insight, they begin to approach meetings differently, not as a performance to be judged, but as a conversation to be part of. Their journal becomes a tool for growth, helping them build confidence and reduce their anxiety. Now think about your own life. How often do you reflect on your social interactions? Do you ever take the time to unpack what went well, what felt challenging, and why? This is where journaling can make a difference. It gives you a structured way to process your experiences, turning moments of discomfort into opportunities for learning. And the best part, you don't need anything fancy, just a notebook, a pen, and a willingness to be honest with yourself. Here's a challenge for you. This week, start a Stoic journal. After each social interaction, take a few minutes to write about what happened, how you felt, and what you learned. You don't need to write pages, just a few sentences will do. The goal is to create a habit of reflection, one that helps you see your progress and build your confidence over time. As you write, you might find that the act of putting your thoughts on paper doesn't just clarify your experiences, it also lightens the weight of your anxiety. Because when you understand your fears, you take away their power to control you. Journaling isn't just a tool for self-reflection, it's a pathway to self-mastery. By looking inward, you gain the clarity and insight to face your fears with courage and calm. So grab a notebook and start writing. You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself and how much lighter the world feels when you process your thoughts instead of carrying them around. Stoicism teaches us to protect our inner peace. How can boundaries help with social anxiety? At first glance, boundaries might seem like walls, something that separates us from others. But in reality, they're more like guidelines, ways to honor our energy, values, and well-being in a world that often demands more than we can give. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that guarding your mind and emotions wasn't about shutting people out. It was about creating space for what truly matters. For those struggling with social anxiety, setting boundaries can be a game changer. It's not about avoiding connection, it's about fostering it in a way that feels sustainable and authentic. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most practical voices, put it this way: guard your mind like a fortress, it's the only thing truly yours. This idea reminds us that our thoughts, emotions, and energy are precious resources, ones we have the power to protect. When it comes to social interactions, boundaries help us do just that. They allow us to say no to situations that drain us, yes to those that nourish us, and maybe to those we're unsure about, all without guilt or fear. By setting these limits, we're not isolating ourselves, we're creating the conditions for healthier, more meaningful connections. Consider this example. Imagine someone who feels obligated to attend every social event they're invited to, even when they're exhausted or overwhelmed. Over time, this pattern leaves them feeling resentful and drained, dreading interactions instead of enjoying them. But then they decide to set a boundary. They'll only attend events they genuinely want to go to, and they'll leave when they feel their energy dipping. At first, this feels uncomfortable. They worry about disappointing others or being judged. But over time, they notice something remarkable. Their social interactions become more enjoyable because they're no longer forcing themselves to be present when they're not truly there. This is the power of boundaries. They don't just protect your energy, they enhance your ability to connect authentically. Now think about your own life. Are there social situations where you feel stretched too thin? Maybe it's saying yes to every request, staying longer than you'd like at gatherings, or engaging in conversations that leave you feeling drained. What would it feel like to set a boundary in one of those areas? It doesn't have to be drastic. Maybe it's limiting the time you spend at an event, or choosing to step away from conversations that feel emotionally taxing. The key is to start small, honoring your needs without apology. When you do, you'll find that boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges to a more balanced, fulfilling social life. Here's a question to reflect on. What's one boundary you can set in your social life this week? It could be as simple as carving out time to recharge after a busy day, or as bold as declining an invitation that doesn't align with your priorities. Remember, boundaries aren't about being rigid or unkind. They're about respecting yourself enough to show up fully when you choose to. And when you do, you'll discover that the more you protect your inner peace, the more you have to offer the world. Boundaries, in the Stoic sense, aren't limits, they're invitations to live more authentically and connect more deeply. So, where will you start? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a calmer, more confident version of yourself. Stoicism teaches us to learn from others. How can role models help with social anxiety? When we look to those who embody the qualities we admire, we gain more than just inspiration. We gain a roadmap for our own growth. Role models, especially those rooted in Stoic principles, show us what's possible. They demonstrate how to navigate challenges with grace, how to remain calm under pressure, and how to connect with others authentically. By observing their example, we can begin to see social confidence not as an unattainable ideal, but as a skill we can cultivate through practice and intention. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most insightful voices, wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. This idea reminds us that the people we surround ourselves with and the examples we choose to follow shape who we become. When it comes to social anxiety, this is especially powerful. By studying the actions and attitudes of those who handle social situations with ease, we can start to adopt their mindset and behaviors. It's not about copying them exactly, it's about learning from their approach and adapting it to our own lives. Think about someone you admire for their social confidence. Maybe it's a friend who lights up every room they enter, a colleague who speaks effortlessly in meetings, or even a historical figure like Marcus Aurelius, who led with quiet strength despite the pressures of leadership. What is it about them that stands out to you? Is it their ability to listen deeply, their calm demeanor, or their willingness to be vulnerable? By identifying these qualities, you can start to incorporate them into your own interactions. Over time, what once felt like an unreachable standard becomes a set of practical habits you can practice and refine. Here's a practical way to apply this. The next time you're in a social situation, channel your role model. If they're known for their warmth, focus on being present and kind. If they're admired for their composure, remind yourself to breathe and stay grounded. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to try. And with each attempt, you'll find that the gap between where you are and where you want to be gets a little smaller. This is the power of role models. They don't just inspire us, they show us how to take actionable steps toward our goals. Now, take a moment to reflect. Who is your social confidence role model? What qualities do they possess that you'd like to develop? And how can you start embodying those qualities in your own life? Remember, growth isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. And sometimes the best way to do that is by looking to those who have walked the path before us. By learning from their example, you're not just overcoming social anxiety, you're building a stronger, more confident version of yourself, one interaction at a time. What if acceptance could be the key to overcoming social anxiety? It might sound counterintuitive after all. When we feel anxious, our instinct is to fight against it, to resist the discomfort and wish it away. But the Stoics offer a different approach. Instead of resisting what we cannot change, we can choose to accept it. this doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to discomfort. It means acknowledging reality as it is without letting it dictate our inner peace. When it comes to social anxiety, acceptance can be a powerful tool. By letting go of the need to control every outcome, we free ourselves from the weight of what-ifs and should-haves, creating space to engage with others more authentically. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most influential teachers, put it this way: happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of acceptance. When we try to control what's beyond our power, like how others perceive us or whether we'll feel anxious, we set ourselves up for frustration and stress. But when we focus on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, and how we choose to respond, we reclaim our power. Acceptance isn't about passivity, it's about clarity. It's about seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, and finding peace in that truth. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone walking into a party where they don't know many people. Their mind might race with thoughts like, what if I say something awkward? Or what if no one talks to me? But instead of resisting these feelings, they choose to accept them. They remind themselves, it's okay to feel nervous. I don't have to control how others see me. All I can do is show up, be kind, and see what happens. By embracing their anxiety instead of fighting it, they are able to approach the situation with a sense of calm and curiosity. The anxiety doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip, allowing them to connect more genuinely with the people around them. Now, think about your own life. Is there a social situation where you've been resisting reality, wishing it were different? Maybe it's a conversation you're dreading, an event you're nervous about, or a relationship that feels strained. What would it feel like to accept the situation as it is, without trying to control the outcome? This doesn't mean you stop caring or stop trying. It simply means you let go of the struggle against what you can't change. When you do, you might find that acceptance doesn't just reduce your anxiety. It also opens the door to deeper connections and a greater sense of peace. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you're in a social situation that makes you anxious, try practicing acceptance. Instead of fighting your nerves or wishing the moment were different, acknowledge them. Say to yourself, this is how I feel right now, and that's okay. Notice how it feels to let go of the need to control everything. You might find that acceptance doesn't just ease your anxiety, it also helps you show up more fully with a sense of calm and authenticity. After all, the only thing we truly control is how we choose to respond to the moment. And when we respond with acceptance, we open ourselves to a world of possibility. Stoicism teaches us that small steps lead to big changes. How can this help with social anxiety? When faced with overwhelming social challenges, it's easy to feel paralyzed by the enormity of the task. But the Stoics remind us that progress doesn't require giant leaps. It's built on the steady, consistent effort of taking one step at a time. By breaking down social fears into smaller, manageable pieces, you create a pathway to confidence that feels less daunting and more achievable. This approach isn't just practical, it's deeply rooted in Stoic wisdom, which values persistence and gradual growth over quick fixes or instant results. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most enduring voices, once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This powerful idea reminds us that the challenges we face, whether it's social anxiety or anything else, aren't obstacles to avoid. They're opportunities to grow one small step at a time. When you view your fears through this lens, they become less about what's holding you back and more about what's pushing you forward. Each small step you take, no matter how insignificant it feels in the moment, is a victory. It's a step toward building the resilience and confidence you need to face bigger challenges down the road. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine someone who struggles with making small talk at social events. The idea of walking into a room full of strangers feels overwhelming, so they decide to start small. Instead of aiming to talk to everyone, they set a goal to introduce themselves to just one person. The first time, their heart races and they stumble over their words, but they do it. The next time, it feels a little easier. Over weeks and months, they gradually increase their comfort level, moving from one conversation to several, and eventually, they find themselves navigating social settings with ease. This is the power of incremental progress. Each small step builds on the last, creating a foundation of confidence that grows stronger over time. Now, think about your own life. What's one social challenge that feels overwhelming to you? Maybe it's speaking up in a group, attending a large event, or even just saying hello to someone new. What if, instead of trying to tackle it all at once, you broke it down into smaller, more manageable steps? Start with something simple, something that feels just outside your comfort zone, but not so far that it feels impossible. Maybe it's making eye contact with a stranger, asking a single question in a conversation, or simply showing up to an event and staying for 10 minutes. The key is to start small and build from there. Here's a question to reflect on. What's one small step you can take this week to move towards social confidence? It doesn't have to be a huge leap, just something that nudges you slightly beyond where you are now. Remember, the Stoics didn't promise that growth would be easy, but they did promise that it would be worth it. Every small step you take is a victory, and with each one, you're not just overcoming anxiety, you're building a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. So, what's your first step? The answer might just be the beginning of a transformative journey. Stoicism teaches us to reflect on our experiences. How can this help with social anxiety? When we take the time to look back on our social interactions, we're not just replaying the past, we're uncovering valuable lessons that can shape our future. Reflection in the Stoic sense is about more than just thinking, it's about learning. By examining what went well, what felt challenging, and why, we gain clarity and confidence. This process doesn't erase anxiety, but it does give us the tools to face it with greater understanding and resilience. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most insightful voices, wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." This simple yet profound statement reminds us that every experience, whether positive or negative, is an opportunity to grow. When it comes to social anxiety, this means reflecting on our interactions with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, we can ask ourselves, what did I learn from this? How can I use this experience to improve? This shift in perspective turns even the most awkward moments into stepping stones toward greater confidence. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine someone who recently attended a networking event and felt overwhelmed by the crowd. At first, they're tempted to label the experience as a failure. I was too quiet. I didn't make any connections, but then they decide to reflect more deeply. They realize that while they didn't initiate many conversations, they did listen attentively when others spoke, and they left the event with a few new ideas to explore. By focusing on what they did well, active listening, they identify an area where they naturally excel. They also recognize that their discomfort in large groups might stem from a need for smaller, more intimate settings. With this insight, they decide to focus on building one-on-one connections in the future. This is the power of reflection. It doesn't just help us understand our past, it guides our next steps. Now think about your own life. Can you recall a recent social interaction that left you feeling anxious or uncertain? Take a moment to reflect on it. What happened? How did you feel? What did you learn? Maybe you discovered that you're more comfortable in smaller groups, or that preparing a few conversation starters helps ease your nerves. Perhaps you realized that your fear of judgment was worse than the reality. Whatever the insight, the act of reflecting on it turns a moment of discomfort into an opportunity for growth. Here's a challenge for you. This week, set aside 10 minutes to reflect on a social interaction. Write down what happened, how you felt, and what you learned. Don't judge yourself, just observe. The goal isn't to find fault, it's to find clarity. You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself and your patterns. And with each reflection, you'll find that social anxiety becomes less of a mystery and more of a manageable challenge. Because when you understand your fears, you take away their power to control you. Reflection, in the Stoic sense, isn't just about looking back. It's about moving forward. By learning from our experiences, we build the confidence to face future interactions with calm and clarity. So, take a moment to reflect. What's one lesson you've learned from a recent social interaction? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a more confident, resilient version of yourself. What if letting go could free you from social anxiety? It's a radical idea, especially when so much of our fear in social situations comes from worrying about how we'll be perceived. Will they like me? Did I say the right thing? What if I embarrass myself? These questions swirl in our minds, feeding the very anxiety we want to escape. But Stoicism offers a different path, the art of detachment. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or uncaring. It's about releasing your grip on things you can't control, like the opinions of others, and focusing instead on what you can control, your own actions, intentions, and mindset. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound insight reminds us that external outcomes, whether someone approves of us, laughs at our joke, or even ignores us, are beyond our control. What's within our power is how we choose to respond. When you detach from the need for approval or validation, you take back your freedom. You're no longer held hostage by the fear of judgment because you've stopped giving it so much weight. Instead, you can focus on being authentic, present, and true to yourself. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're at a party and you've just introduced yourself to someone new. As you talk, you notice they seem distracted, glancing over your shoulder or giving short, uninterested responses. If you're attached to their approval, this might trigger a wave of anxiety. Did I say something wrong? Do they not like me? But if you're practicing detachment, you can shift your perspective. You might think, I can't control how they respond, but I can control how I show up. I'll stay kind, curious, and present regardless of their reaction. By letting go of the need for a specific outcome, you free yourself from the spiral of self-doubt and find peace in the moment. Now think about your own life. Can you recall a time when you felt anxious because you were overly focused on someone else's opinion? Maybe it was during a presentation, a date, or even a casual conversation. What would it feel like to approach that situation with a sense of detachment, not apathy, but a calm acceptance that you can't control how others see you? The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't diminish your connection to others, it deepens it. When you're not preoccupied with seeking approval, you're free to engage more authentically, listen more deeply, and connect more meaningfully. Here's a challenge for you. In your next social interaction, practice detachment. Let go of the need for a specific outcome and focus instead on being fully present. Notice how it feels to interact without the weight of judgment or expectation. You might find that the less you cling to external approval, the more you discover your own inner calm and confidence. Detachment isn't about avoiding life, it's about living it more freely with less fear and more joy. So what's one situation where you can try letting go this week? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a calmer, more fearless you. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to revisit the powerful Stoic strategies we've explored together. From understanding the dichotomy of control, focusing on what's within your power and letting go of what isn't, to the transformative practice of cognitive reframing, which helps you see social situations as opportunities rather than threats. These tools are designed to help you build inner fortitude and calm. We've also discussed the importance of presence, of grounding yourself in the here and now to dissolve the weight of anxiety. Each of these principles, rooted in ancient wisdom, offers a practical way to navigate the challenges of social anxiety with greater clarity and confidence. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most profound voices, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This quote captures the essence of what we've been exploring, the power of the mind to shape our experiences. When you harness this power by reframing your thoughts, staying present, and focusing on what you can control, you take the first steps toward conquering social anxiety. It's not about eliminating fear entirely. It's about learning to move through it with purpose and poise. Now, it's your turn to take these strategies into the world. Which one resonates most with you? Is it the clarity of the dichotomy of control, the shift in perspective that comes with cognitive reframing, or the grounding practice of staying present? Whatever it is, start small. Choose one principle to apply in your daily life and see how it transforms your approach to social situations. Remember, growth isn't about perfection, it's about progress, one step at a time. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you. What Stoic strategy will you try first to build your inner calm? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can learn from each other's experiences and support one another on this journey. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit from these timeless principles. Together, we can turn social anxiety from a barrier into a bridge, leading us toward deeper connections and a more fulfilling life. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next